This is an Eyewitness News special presentation. Your voice, your future. A town hall meeting exploring the West Virginia water crisis and what's next for our communities.
The first hint that something was wrong was the strong smell of licorice in the Charleston air. On Thursday, January 9th, thousands of gallons of a chemical called MCHM, or hex meth, escaped from Freedom Industries into the Elk River. The chemical, used in coal processing, soon invaded the West Virginia American water system.
So I've just declared a state of emergency in the following counties.
By that evening, a do not use order was in place, leaving 100,000 water customers and estimated 300,000 people high and dry.
The only acceptable use is flushing your toilet.
Parts of 9 West Virginia counties were soon declared federal disaster areas as the scramble began to get water for drinking, cooking, and cleaning to the hundreds of thousands unable to turn on their taps. The crisis put a spotlight on Freedom Industries. In a highly publicized news conference, company president Gary Southern seemed ill-prepared to answer questions and tried to cut the event short.
We could wrap this thing up. I will.
Well, we actually have a lot of questions, and it's been a long day for a lot of people who don't have water.
Even after home water pipes were flushed, the smell of licorice remained for many. That, combined with sediment and cloudy water emerging from taps, instilled little confidence that the water was okay to use.
Because I'll drink it if it smells.
You will drink it if it smells?
Absolutely. I drank water from home that had an odor in it.
Why did that not bother you to drink the water that still smelled?
Because I know it's below the health limit. The protective health limit, we can still detect the smell well below that limit, and I know that we're below that limit, so I have no concern drinking the water.
The disaster has raised many disturbing questions about the safety and viability of our water supply, and it also uncovered loopholes in state law concerning the regulation of above-ground storage tanks. Many are angry and frustrated that now, nearly 3 weeks after the spill, life has not returned to normal. Let's go live to the Clay Center for the Arts and Sciences in Charleston for a town hall meeting on the water crisis. Here is our moderator, Eyewitness News anchor Rick Lord.
Thank you, Kenny. We are live at the Clay Center for the Arts and Sciences in Charleston, West Virginia, where tonight we have assembled a panel of experts to get your questions answered on the West Virginia water crisis. We are hoping to get to the bottom of it all. It's now been almost 3 weeks that we have all endured this. We want to know how it happened, why it happened, and most importantly, what can we do to make sure that it does not happen again? Our panel of experts is assembled on the stage this evening. As you look at the stage, you will notice 2 conspicuous empty seats. There is a third, but I will get to that in a moment. We did extend invitations repeatedly to West Virginia American Water and to Freedom Industries. At each step of the way, those invitations were declined. We are still hopeful that over the next hour, they might walk in this door. We have made it easy for them to slide in. We think that you deserve answers, and maybe common sense will prevail, and they will get here and join our panel tonight. But let's show some respect for the panelists who did show up and step up to the plate this evening. I want to briefly introduce them. From your left to right, we will begin with Randy Huffman. He is the Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. His agency has spearheaded the state's response into the leak. Mike Dorsey is in charge of the DEP's crisis management team. He has spent the better part of 3 weeks at the site of the spill at Freedom. Dr. Raul Gupta is the director of the Kanawha-Charleston Health Department. He is without a doubt the closest health official to the public and is in a unique position to answer your health-related questions. Next to Dr. Gupta is Erin Brockovich. She is a consumer advocate and environmental activist who in 1993, you might recall, played a huge role in building a case against Pacific Gas and Electric. That company had contaminated drinking water in Hinckley, California with hexavalent chromium. So it's safe to say that her experience is quite relevant to the issues we are dealing with here. Bob Bocock is an engineer and environmental investigator who works closely with Brockovich. He's been in the water treatment and testing business for more than 30 years, and we are still expecting Johnny Banks this evening. He is the lead investigator of the Chemical Safety Board out of Washington, D.C. He, too, has been on the site at Freedom repeatedly over the last 3 weeks. And Elizabeth Nareka is my colleague and co-anchor. She's working the social media desk this evening. Liz?
All right, Rick, thanks a lot. And I'm going to be monitoring everything social media tonight. We're going to be monitoring 2 social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook. And it's a great opportunity for you at home. If you didn't get a chance to make it out here tonight, you can still interact with us, and your opinions and your thoughts do matter to us, and we'd really like to hear from you.
Thank you, Liz. And also joining us this evening, my co-moderator and the liaison from the audience to the panelists, my Eyewitness News colleague, Kenny Bass.
Don't expect Mr. Banks to arrive. I just found out that Johnny Banks, the lead investigator for the Chemical Safety Board, can't make it. They promised they'd be here for the next one, though, but they can't make it for this one.
I should point out, Kenny, that we do have in the front row this evening, off camera, a row of experts and local dignitaries who might be able to fill in some gaps for questions that might not be entirely apropos for the panelists.
And we're going to call on those guys. But the questions that we're going to be asking for most of this event is from you. I know that many of you have submitted them online already as a part of the registration process. And we've already talked with audience members about how they can get those questions to me. And so we'll be hearing from these people who have, I'm certain, many questions for the panelists who were kind enough to join us. And personally, thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. Rick?
Thank you, Kenny, and of course, thank you all for coming, because we can't do this without you, and it is all about you. And to kind of get you involved right away, just by show of applause, how many of you out there right now do not trust the water that's coming out of your taps? Safe to say an overwhelming majority. In contrast, how many of you do 100% trust the water right now?
Well, St. Albans doesn't count.
Someone from St. Albans.
St. Albans is good.
Pretty much crickets.
No.
I would pose the same question to our panelists. We've offered you tap water and bottled water in front of you this evening. We're not going to put you on the spot or anything, but feel free to pick whatever you choose tonight. And I think that would
to the Secretary's credit, I did see him already take a big swig of the tap water. So credit or dangerous living.
Well, let's start getting to the bottom of it, Kenny. Do you have a question from the audience?
I don't know. Have we started rolling, folks? You know what? We're gonna get people up here, but let me hop on up. You're close. See the advantage of sitting beside me. First of all, what's your name?
Tommy Grayley.
Where are you from, Tommy?
I'm from up eastern Indianola County, Creek.
Who do you have a question for?
Well, I just have a question in general of why we didn't have mechanisms in place and who dropped the ball in the political realm.
What's happened here, in our opinion, in West Virginia, they're going to be the poster child to this nation of what to do and what not to do when we have a municipal crisis of this magnitude.
We are back live inside the Clay Center. We know that time is very limited for this town hall meeting, so we are going to try to get through as many questions and answers as possible to keep them as concise as possible so that we can get through as many issues as we humanly can in the next hour. Kenny?
My question is how do you plan on restoring our faith in West Virginia American Water, which obviously Mr. Banks isn't here, so that's null and void, the DEP, Health Department, and many other sources. I don't want to leave West Virginia, but they handled it like a cat chasing its tail, just going around and around.
And we respect the fact that it's going to take some time, and that's something that that is something that is we can't talk our way into that. We have to demonstrate it by our actions.
Should we be doing health screenings now to use as baselines for potential problems in the future?
Dr. Gupta and maybe Aaron, because you've dealt with previous instances similar to this, maybe you two can handle that. Dr. Gupta?
Sure, thank you for that. We don't know what we don't know. It's easy for folks to say, well, we don't think it's a problem, but we can't prove that right now.
We don't know about these chemicals, whether 1 ppm is safe for a 40-year-old healthy adult white male, certainly may not be for an infant, a pregnant woman, or an elderly person. And so we have to pay attention when a situation where people have been exposed and monitor them. Your state, in my opinion, has a golden opportunity to step up and provide a monitoring service for all of those exposed in this situation, and I think that they should.
Who do I trust? Do I trust the water quality specialist that's been told to call me and I've been continually following up on? I spoke to him again yesterday. Or do I trust you all to go ahead and let my children and, bathe and stuff in the water? I'm extremely frustrated.
We need to understand the basics of this. We are the first human beings this chemical has ever been experimented on. Before this, okay?
Hey, he's right.
All right.
I mean...
So we're the lab population in a way. And before that was tested on rats and some of the other lab animals. And the data has from there extrapolated, and it happens all the time that's done. So the question now is, what I've said is consistently is, we are told the water is safe. People at the same time I'm seeing are having a lot of issues with smell. I'm seeing rashes. I'm seeing diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, asthma triggers, migraines, you name it. I cannot prove causality at this point. We're looking into that. So with those facts in mind, I can drink the water if the smell's not there. My family is not drinking the water. Those are just the facts.
Something very important for the community doctors out there. We're talking about 1 part per million of a chemical, and everybody seems to be focused on that. At that water treatment plant, that chemical was oxidized with chlorine, and it made scores of other, probably more dangerous chemicals. And if you're showering in that and you're inhaling that water in humidifiers or CPAPs or nebulizers, it will cause you permanent damage, and we all need to be aware of that. It's not just about drinking anymore.
Oftentimes, doctors don't even understand what's going on because they don't see this type of chemical in a human exposure. And so as Dr. Gupta was saying, in essence, we become lab rats.
What do we do to get through to them to make sure that this doesn't happen again? How do you regulate them when they really have no way to not lose money? You can't get to their paycheck, their wallets, so what do you do?
Very quickly. When I was first mayor, I've been mayor 11 years. 10 years ago, we fought them on a rate increase and we beat them. 6 units paid their lawyers, and we were one of them, about $300,000. They paid theirs $1 million. As soon as we beat them, they laughed at us. They refiled, and then whatever they paid their lawyers is passed on to us in a rate increase. That's what it's like when you deal with a utility, and in this case, it's the water company. It's very frustrating. It's very heartbreaking. And but to the original question, if you want us to pass out water, we'll do it again.
So we actually have well water, and the issue and concern that I have is that everybody dumped all of this out of their hot water tanks into their backyards. And so within all of these counties, people have well water, and now I'm afraid that people with well water is going to get this seeped into their well water.
I want to know why the federal EPA wasn't given jurisdiction over the contamination site, thus utilizing all the resources that come with that.
Are you going to start taking citizens' concerns seriously instead of blowing us off every time we have a health concern or a dust blasting concern, or are you going to go back to business as usual? And
Secretary Huffman, you've heard his question. What's your answer?
We have understanding that this material is being used and used in a number of places. This particular material used a lot in the coal preparation process.
What needs to happen is there needs to be a systematic flushing program put into place. And that doesn't mean opening up the fire hydrants and returning the chemical back to the river through the stormwater system. It means literally going out, inspecting the tanks, isolating those zones, flushing it through activated carbon with enough capacity to remove the chemical from the environment once and for all so that it can be properly destroyed and get on with it. The fact that they just keep pointing the finger in a big circle and saying he's responsible, I've never seen such a mishandled emergency in my life.
At the risk of being one of those guys that points the finger, the state health department actually regulates safe drinking water. That's who's responsible for it.
All right, thank you.
Regulatory engineer over West Virginia American Water Company. 21 days ago, I'd have been knocking on their door saying, you guys are out, my guys are in, have a nice day, and I would have been handling this problem.
What kind of guidelines does the state and federal government have right now for all these above ground facilities? What kind of inspections? How often do you do it? Do you do it every month, every year, once a week?
There are as many as 3,500 tanks around the state that fall into this category of tanks that are not holding fuel or not holding a hazardous substance that don't have those stringent regulatory requirements associated with them. And we don't know what's in all of those tanks. I mean, we're talking here tonight and have been for 3 weeks talking about one chemical or two chemicals. There are many more unregulated chemicals in this country than there are regulated chemicals, by hundreds of fold. And most of those we don't know very much about. So while the response plans that many have talked about here, or the lack of response as it may be, while as important as that is, prevention is obviously the best cure for this. We have got to set up a system whereby we can prevent any of these tanks, because there's many more than what we see on the Elk River, prevent any of them from ever rupturing and from ever even getting close to our drinking water supply.
All of our frustrations are warranted. Our anger is warranted, but please keep in mind, not one of these panelists caused that leak. Not one of these panelists disseminated that water. We wish that Freedom and American Water could be here, but please be respectful of everybody up here. And with that, I want to send it over to Elizabeth Nareka, who has another question from our online audience. Liz?
Okay, a lot of people are interacting with us on social media, and this one's from Facebook. A lot of people are concerned, obviously, about the safety of their children, bathing them, giving them the water, them washing their hands at school, and etc. And actually, we received a message from a 12-year-old little girl, and I'm not going to use your last name, but her name's Jessica, and she lives over on the west side of Charleston by Cato Park. And she says that whenever she turns the water on in the home, she doesn't smell the licorice-like smell when the cold water's on, but when she turns it on the hot side, it still smells bad. And she said that she's really scared to use it, and she's also afraid about, if she does use it, what it'll do to her when she grows up.
Join the club. Aaron, Bob?
It's
good point. She's making a good point.
It's an excellent point, and it's sad for all of us in this room as adults to listen to a really very intelligent, profound, concerning question from a 12-year-old little girl. And we see this all the time, and it is a huge concern because we don't know the long-term effect.
So basically, since they've moved the chemicals that was supposed to be a secondary containment facility and it's not, are they going to have to move the chemicals, and are they going to investigate POCA blending and prosecute them because they're breaking laws?
Is POCA blending under closer scrutiny, and should they be, and what are you going to do about it?
Yes, and that site's being investigated as well, because in addition to the chemicals that were transferred from the Elk River site to POCA blending, there are other things that they are storing on site now. Some may or may not be hazardous. I don't know that, but they're quite a mix of different things down there.
My home is 8 years old, and Aaron may be able to answer this. Is there an average nationwide of what home values decrease when something like this happens? I mean, I don't feel like I can sell my house right now. I don't have approved water.
Home values.
No,
Aaron?
It does, and we see that it's going to be all of our problems because groundwater pollution is affecting the entire nation, and yes, it does affect our real estate, and it does affect our property values. And dare I breathe the word lawsuit, but let's not kid ourselves. They abound in situations like this, and they usually make claims for diminution of property values.
Quickly, there's a community action planning meeting following this event over at St. John's Episcopal that's right around the corner, right here on the east end. Snacks will be provided. It's hosted by the people concerned about chemical safety. So if you have the time or you're interested in that, you can just go right around the corner and continue with the conversation over there. We want to thank you all for coming tonight. And hey, you guys, stay frustrated, stay angry. As Aaron said, we deserve answers. We here are trying to get those for you. So keep your questions coming to Eyewitness News, and we will do our best to make sure that your concerns are addressed.